Greetings. Welcome to the SciFi Pubcast, the podcast that tries to be a pub and perhaps someday a pub that tries to be a podcast. And as always, we are looking for customers to come visit our bar. So if you're passionate about something and you'll be on the podcast, well, let us know, because this bar is all about community. And I can tell you this right now, it's a bar today. We're not doing this for money. We don't have Patreon. We don't sell advertising, mostly because no one wants to buy advertising. But I digress. So if you want to help us out, please consider leaving a 5-star review wherever you find this show, joining our Discord server, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. I'm Joel. Drake. I'm the owner of the SciFi Pubcast, so to speak, and I'm looking around, and we're going to have a great show because we have a full crew on today. We have Kerry Simpson, Derek Beebe, and Dr. Randal Graham. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Joel.
Hey. So, yes, we're recording on a Sunday again. In Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, they just said there's a tornado watch, so if I disappear, I'm likely in Kansas. So there's
and of course, if he does end up in Kansas, he won't be able to get back because the borders are closed.
Yeah. Oh, well, what can you do? You just have to adapt, I suppose, and evolve. Right, and yeah, stay away from witches. Okay, let's see.
Hey! I resemble that remark.
Nah,
stop. You live in the West.
I do also live in the West, yes.
There we go. We're doing a show on addiction and science fiction, and I can tell you I was doing some intense field research last night at my local bar about addictions, in this case alcohol. So I'm a bit under the weather. Hopefully not a tornado, but still under the weather. But I suspect my colleagues are actually sober and energetic. Right, guys? Please tell me, please.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
great.
Working on it.
Lovely. Well, let's start it this way. Carrie, how's
Yes.
the quality of your day been?
Well, I've only been awake for a few hours. I've managed to restock my pizza dough supply, and I am sober. I may fix that later, but
Okay.
I haven't decided yet.
I'm on my second Caesar, which is a Canadian hangover drink, which is famous in Canada. It's kind of like a Bloody Mary, but with clamato instead of tomato. Which is, yeah. I'm all about educating Americans on Caesars because it's a Canadian thing to do. Yes.
Clamato is just nasty, though.
Yeah.
If someone was drinking a Bloody Mary and said, "You know what, fish."
Yeah, exactly. That's from Alberta. It's from Ski Hill outside of Calgary thing in the 70s who actually invented this drink. And it caught on.
Well, it's weird. One of my cousins, we were out at the river, and he picked up a couple of these, like, it was Budweiser, so it was just, it was nasty beer anyway. But it was like a Clamato Budweiser. And
This episode sponsored by Budweiser.
Yeah. and it was the nastiest thing I've ever tasted in my life. It was just like, ugh.
So let's go to let's turn to Derek, because I know Derek has a tremendous amount of knowledge about cocktails. Derek, how's things in your world?
Oh, just living the unending American purgatory, waiting for the next year.
Yes, 93 days before the election, folks. 93 days. Yes, hopefully.
Yes,
yeah, hopefully.
we hope.
And I should ask you, Derek, and I always dread asking you about this, but how's our kitchen doing?
It's all right. I've got a few specials for today. I basically just put some fancy names on things because, supplies are limited. I've got melange, which is just oregano. I've got glitter stim, which is just sugar sprinkles. I've got death sticks, which are just pixie sticks. And I've got Ketracel white, which is just phosphorescent paint with vanilla extract in it, so it tastes good.
Yeah, I understand why bar owners tend to go to the higher drugs because, they don't have to think about these things because it's stressful and, it makes them anxious. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, I got nothing to say to this, guys. I'm just going to move on.
Eat up.
Randal, it's great to have you on our show again. This is amazing.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this one all week.
Yeah, and I understand you're drinking a cocktail as well.
I am indeed. In honor of the theme of today's episode, as well as sci-fi in general, I followed a recipe that I found in one of the menus while I was on the Star Trek cruise to make Tranya, a citrusy beverage from the original series. Remember the episode with Clint Howard playing the Baylock character? When he says, "My favorite lame line ever, Tranya, I hope you relish it as much as I." And I can't help but say that every time I make this drink, which is not that frequent. But I made it following that recipe, which is the base alcohol is tequila, and then you add some triple sec, some Angostura bitters, grapefruit juice, and tonic water. And it's very, very yummy.
What's that?
It's
What?
Sex. Start with single first, Derek. I'm sure you've tried your hand at sex, and you can move on to double and then try triple.
Oh, I would say it's an orange curacao, but yeah, go to Curacao. You might actually have to get some sex down there. Okay, I don't know, Derek. Okay. It's an island, and it's a Dutch protectorate in the Caribbean. Okay, but I digress. Okay. Derek,
That went in a completely unexpected direction. Thanks to Derek. Thank you, sir. That was fun.
Dear Lord. With me, Joel. I'm here. I'm here. Did I say I'm here? Because I'm here. Nothing too much.
No, you didn't say you were here. No, you're just
Yeah.
a figment of our imagination.
It could be on this show, I can tell you that. What else? Well, what's happening with me? Well, on Netflix, season 2 of The Umbrella Academy dropped the other day, and I'm halfway through it, and I'm quite enjoying it. I find season 2 so much better than season 1 because they got into the plot now as opposed to making the world or world building and introducing characters. Guys, have you seen the new season yet of Umbrella
Yeah,
Academy?
I finished it yesterday.
Halfway through it.
I'm on episode 3, so I am the laggard here. I am really, really enjoying it, though. I love the unique nature of the characters in this series.
Yeah.
Anyone who enjoys the TV show, I encourage to check out the comic book. It's really great. It's one of my favorite comics. There's only like 18 issues in total, and it's really clever. It's a lot more wacky and funny than the TV show is.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. So you have it, you read these types of comics in the kitchen, make it quirky and, yeah, not as serious. Lovely.
You got a red mustache, Joel.
I haven't shaved. I haven't shaved in like 5 days. I have to shave for work on Tuesday because Monday's a civic holiday in Canada. So yeah, it's a long weekend for me. Yeah, explains
No matter
why.
how profound anything anyone says is, the response, "You have a red mustache," instantly deflates it.
All right. Before we jump into this really high of a topic, our beer recommendation for this episode is the Pilsner by Broadhead Brewing Company, based out of Orleans, Ontario, Canada. Orleans is like a suburb of Ottawa, if I have it right. It's just right outside. It's like a 10-minute drive from downtown Ottawa. So I had it the other night, not last night, I think the night before. It's kind of oddly blurs in. That's the thing about addiction. Basically, it makes you do things that's bad for you, such as drinking the night before recording a podcast. But I digress yet again. Yes, Broadhead Brewing Company Pilsner is 5.3% alcohol by volume and has a 22 out of 100 IBU scale rating. There you go, guys. Now we're into the show. Yay!
Yay!
We're
Far out, man.
We're talking addictions and science fiction and geekdom. You could say we reach our high with this show. God, I wrote this sober yesterday before I went to the patio. Okay. So let's talk about all the ups and downs with the topic. It's not like we're concerned with low ratings. All right, addiction. We're not professional psychologists, so psychiatrists or psychologists. What else? But we are well researched. No. So, definition of addiction.
Some of us are.
Yeah. Definition of addiction from the American Psychiatric Association. And I quote off of their website: addiction is a complex condition, a brain disease that is manifested by compulsive substance use despite harmful consequence. People with addiction have an intense focus on using a certain substance, such as alcohol or drugs, to the point that it takes over their life. They keep using alcohol or a drug even when they know it will cause problems. Yet, a number of effective treatments are available and people can recover from addiction and lead normal, productive lives. That's the context. And I should note that if you fall in this category, which I think me with my social drinking, sometimes I do struggle with that, so it's a real thing. There's lots of helplines out there. Seek help, because addiction is a real mental health issue, and we're not trying to put that down. It is a serious thing in our world, and yeah, it's a mental health issue. And of course, since science fiction and fiction in general reflects the society we live in, well, there's tons and tons of examples in storytelling, and we're going to dive right into this. That was a lot, guys. I need a drink.
Having heard that definition, I'm going to have to face it. I'm addicted to love.
Oh, God.
Nice.
So love, as in the emotional response? Like platonic love, Dirk?
Might as well face it.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't want to start right off the bat with the whole sex addiction, but we can start there if you guys want.
That's actually my wife 2 weeks hence is defending her PhD dissertation on the topic of hypersexual disorder, otherwise known as sex addiction, in males. And every time I tell people that my wife is studying hypersexual disorder in males, I have to say there's no reason for that other than she just discovered this as an interesting topic in the literature and in the lab where she's working. And her entire body of research for the dissertation is based on gathering empirical data to extend previous studies that try to assess whether or not it's actually a thing. It's quite a controversial diagnosis in Canada, at least, and in all of North America with respect to the entry into the DSM-5.
Yeah, so DSM-5 is the Bible for mental health diagnosis. I use it as a lawyer to help me with my casework when I was working as a lawyer. And yes, so sex addiction is not listed in the DSM-5. Is that fair to say, Randal? You may have more knowledge of that specifically.
Yep, there was controversy about it because things that are included in the list of addictions tend to be things that are not generally beneficial or good for you. So you can have a gaming addiction, you can have a substance abuse addiction, but sex isn't sort of ipso facto bad. It's not intrinsically bad for you. And it's really interesting when you dig into the research of it, because it's more about one's feelings about sex than it is about sex itself. Some people will self-report as sex addicts because they used pornography once and feel guilty about it. Some people will self-report as sex addicts because their spouse told them they were, because they had an affair. Right there, a lot of it depends on religiosity, on level of guilt and shame that you have about sex, rather than how much sex you're having. If you're having tons and tons and tons of sex all the time, Joel, and are happy about it.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's been let me look at my watch, but still, go ahead. Okay.
But if you're exceedingly happy about it and it doesn't interfere with the ordinary functioning of life, then you would absolutely not fall into anything approaching something resembling an addiction. And the other issue, before I take up too much time, is that things that might present as sex addiction probably stem from other things, like OCD. Like you have an obsessive compulsive disorder related somehow to sex, or you have some sort of deep religious-based shame related to sex. So that seems to be the controversy. But anyway, my wife knows about a zillion times more about this than I do, because she's been working on her dissertation for 4 years and defends it in 2 weeks.
Nice.
So I should give up my social alcoholism and perhaps for another addiction like sex addiction? Is that like in the cards?
I think it'd be a lot more fun.
Yeah. I think there's always going to be some liability, some risk involved with that, because unless you stay to the same partner, don't make poor decisions. But it is what it is. It's a real thing.
Or
the behavior.
You can also keep it to yourself.
That's right. Yes.
Oh dear God.
Oh God. Okay, let's bring it into the world of science fiction, because I know this is a handful. Right.
Nice.
Okay. Right before the show, Randall, you suggested a few fictional characters that would probably meet the definition of a sex addiction, if not in a clinical sense, but in like common sense.
Yeah, in sort of the media hype around hypersexual disorder and sex addiction. I mean, the one I didn't mention to you when we were texting back and forth is Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
No. He cares about people. It's about establishing an emotional connection with members of the opposite sex, and attractive members of the opposite sex.
Yeah, I think he has a different prime directive than the rest of us. But and of course, Luoxana Troy, which might have her own explanations for her behavior, and Will Riker,
All right.
They all sort of came to mind.
So Lexiana Troy is the mother of Deanna Troy, right? On the next
Yes.
generation, and she was
Majel Barrett, the first lady of all of Star Trek.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what's her case? What's her central motivation?
It's hard to know, right? When you look at that character, I think they clearly just wrote her to be sort of outrageous comic relief with respect to her treatment of everybody. She always seems to be so sexually motivated, so sort of lascivious in her joking with Captain Picard in particular. But one wonders if it's not just, more of an interest in being outrageous and keeping people off their game, right? It's sort of a diplomatic thing, right? Keeping everybody on their toes, keeping everybody guessing. One wonders, though, how often one's mind would be drawn to sexual thoughts if you're in the brains of other people all the time because you're such a powerful telepath, right? Because people think about sex reasonably frequently. We're all thinking about it right now. And if you're in the heads of everyone in a room, I think sexual thoughts would be quite distracting.
Well, I mean, it's not science fiction necessarily, but the first episode of True Blood, Sookie Stackhouse was explained that she doesn't date because every time, because that's all the men think about. While she's even contemplating a date with them, it's like, yeah, no, I'm gonna go over there and not even bother with it because that's all they want from me.
Yeah, if you were a telepath, never go near teenagers. Because I've been a teenage boy and know how hard it is to concentrate on anything.
Aside from Fortnite.
See, they didn't have Fortnite when I was a lad. But we played Monopoly. No, I can't imagine. I would hate to be in the position. Who was the telepathic character, Tam Albron, in the Tin Man episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, who couldn't shut the telepathy off? He couldn't keep other people's thoughts out of his head and always had uncontrolled access to them. And so you'd get everyone's, like, whether they're addicted to alcohol, sex, gambling, anything antisocial, he would constantly have access to that. And I wonder if those desires would be overwhelming.
Well, there's also the potential to turn that against the telepaths. One of my favorite fantasy novels, out of the Straighted Edge series by Mercedes Lackey, one of the main characters, he gets out of elf prison by mentally going through the entire discography of They Might Be Giants.
Nice.
Well,
that's interesting when you think about it, because there's the possible use of addiction to suppress that sort of telepathy type issue. I'm thinking about Klaus from the Umbrella Academy. Right?
Oh, yeah.
This isn't exactly telepathy. He's always in contact with spirits of the dead and doesn't want to hear them. And so he's been doing drugs since he was a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
It's all a rich tapestry. Everything comes back to addiction.
Interesting. It's almost like you could set up some sort of holodeck that people could pay you money to go in and use. Like a peep show, like a...
Yeah. I don't think that I am a particularly addictive personality, or that I have a particularly addictive personality. But if I were going to be addicted to anything in science fiction, holodection would be awfully difficult to escape. I think that we all, because we're big sci-fi fans, because we like things like video games, comic books, fantasy fiction, role-playing games, it would be hard not to immerse yourself in that kind of stuff all the time if it were available. Like, why bother going to work when you can be Robin Hood today? I think that would be one of the most compelling addictions. From anecdotal evidence that I've read about on the internet, not from any particularly peer-reviewed source, the suggestion is that World of Warcraft is one of the most addictive things we've ever created as a species. And imagine a fully immersive version of that, where you can just, live a different life, rack up achievements in that life, not have to go through the pains of real life. I think that would be an awfully pervasive addiction.
Well, there was a reason they renamed. EverQuest has the nickname Evercrack.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't heard that.
I'd probably get more.
So I would be Lieutenant Barclay.
Right. I'd probably get more sex in the whole, holodeck world, but yeah, that's another thing. So you got holodeck on starships like the Enterprise. You have Quirk's holodeck, and you mentioned Berkeley. Holosuite. Yes. So what's up with technology and being addicted to technology? Because that's a thing. People nowadays complain that the kids of this generation, they're addicted to Apple phones and video games and tech stuff. I don't think it's really a thing, but it could be, especially you look at, say, holo addiction in Star Trek.
Well,
it's the lure of instant gratification. If you can have whatever you want immediately, kind of ruins the need versus want aspect of life.
Yeah, I have noted that my general concentration span is a little bit lower now, and I attribute that to the pervasive ability of technology and being connected all the time. I'll be sitting reading, and instead of reading for 3 hours without looking up, I'll read for half an hour and then look at my phone.
That's why I have to read in the bathtub, because it's like an immersion chamber where I can't think about something else or go on the internet or go on my phone. I remember when I was a kid, I used to actually sit and read books and watch long movies and just do nothing else. But now I always have to be doing two things at once. If I'm watching TV, I'm on my phone or on my computer. I'm always doing multiple things at once. So in order to read, which it does require your full attention, I got to go in an isolation chamber and just focus on just that.
Yeah, I love audiobooks for that reason, where I can sort of go into the room, turn the lights off, lie down, and get my audiobook playing over the HomePod, and have no other distractions.
Wow. So holo addiction. There was a couple episodes that deals with this stuff, right?
Well,
there were indeed.
Every episode Barclay was in, pretty much.
Yeah, but I'm just reading the whole Memory Alpha entry on holo addiction, and man, this guy gets around. His life involves just holo addiction. Like he's a junkie for this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when they finally got him on Voyager, they kind of chalked up his ability to communicate with the Voyager crew as holo addiction event at one point until he managed to prove himself right.
Oh wow! And then
so he was under significant treatment by Deanna Troi.
That is true.
Addiction, yeah, and I really like that storyline a great deal, because you're dealing with the flagship of the Federation, so of course they have an elite crew staffed with people who could have any assignment they want. But it's nice to have sort of a relatable guy like Barclay, who's good at his job, but also has ordinary human frailties, right? Like, having an addiction should not be regarded as a sign of weakness.
No.
It could strike anybody. It tends to run in families. There seems to be a genetic component, and it's a serious mental health concern for which treatment should be available without judgment. And the way they handled Barclay, that they just wanted him to be his best self. They wanted to treat him. They wanted to help him. I thought that was a really healthy early portrayal of addiction in sci-fi that I quite liked. Unlike the more sort of distressing portrayals in what was the name of that episode? And it was in one of the early seasons of The Next Generation. It was like Symbiosis or something.
Yeah.
Where one planet was providing drugs to the other planet. The drugs had been used to avert a pandemic. And then it turned out that it just turned into an addiction, and they were making it more and more pure and more addictive. And that was their only source of economic gain. So we have really devastating depictions of addiction. And then we have the sort of more hopeful Barclay depiction where we can actually help these people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's also Star Trek The Next Generation, the episode called The Game. So it'll be Season 5, Episode 6. When Riker came back and brought this thing with him. I haven't seen this episode in like 20 years, but and I know how your brain works, Randal. You probably knows this episode by heart. What's happening?
I love that episode. I saw it relatively recently. For special reasons, or for science reasons, Ashley Judd is one of my favorite characters in Star Trek The Next Generation. And she is one of the people, she's the one who helps Wesley Crusher avoid becoming addicted to this game. She plays Ensign Robin Leffler, I believe her name was.
Her character makes the jump over to the New Frontier novels, which are rather good. At least the first 6
cool.
are. I haven't read beyond the first 6 of those novels, but they're fun.
But they make up the mock-up versions of the game so that they can't become addicted. The game is really interesting because it deals with sort of the neurochemical nature of addiction by having this game that just appeals to sections of your brain and people who are playing this game, starting with Commander Riker, who of course is the first person seduced by the game.
Of course.
Put the headset on, and you're playing a relatively simplistic, like lame-ass video game where you just try to enter balls into cones, and nothing metaphoric there at all. And the payoff appears to be an orgasm, like the way everyone is acting. The payoff of the game. They're sitting there just playing a video game, and suddenly it's When Harry Met Sally, and one can see why something like that would be quite addictive. And for me, one of the sillier, funny scenes in that episode is Wesley and Robin Leffler sitting on a bed pretending to be addicted to the game, sort of fake reacting to the stimulus that you're supposed to be receiving. But yeah, I quite like that episode until the resolution, which is basically Data with a disco ball. Remember, he comes
with a strobe light, yeah,
with a palm beacon that is activated to resonate at a particular frequency or flash at a particular frequency that cures the brain of addiction. And would that it were that easy to cure someone of an addiction.
Well, and then the other annoying thing was, and I remember talking about this with my geometry teacher at the time. It was like, yeah, that's one of those things where Wesley kind of saves the day and never gets any credit for it.
Wesley. Yeah.
Oh, well.
So, guys, we mentioned this before at the top of the show. There's a drug or a substance in Star Trek called Ketracel White. And it has to do with, okay, guys, how to pronounce it? Jem'Hadar?
The Jem'Hadar.
All right, and the Dominion stuff from Deep Space Nine. What's up with that? Explain it to me, as like someone who hasn't watched the stuff in like decades.
The founders created a drug to control their army, so the soldiers are addicted to the drug. If they don't get it, they die, and the founders and the Vorta supply it to them. So it's a nigh religious ceremony because they worship the founders as gods, and the founders literally give them life by giving them the Ketracel life. Victory is life.
Okay, so it's kind of like me being like a very lapsed liberal Roman Catholic type who every so occasionally has to drink wine just because it's part of my religion.
Sure.
Kind of.
Okay.
Except the wine would have to carry a protein sequence that was necessary for your actual survival.
All right. Well, you mean, like
not just alcohol.
Like wine, right?
That's right.
Okay. Oh, dear Lord. That's the thing about science fiction. There's tons of different neat names for drugs, right, and substances. And I know if you go down the rabbit hole of cyberpunk, every cyberpunk like movie or book has some sort of tie towards either technology, but as well as street drugs and substances of some type, right? So you take Neuromancer, the granddaddy of all cyberpunk novels by Rhythm Gibson, who's Canadian, so drink. So lots of street drugs, but it's like toxin. So yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, and then I just finished Brave New World a couple of days ago, and there's Soma.
Yeah,
in all the colors you could want.
Yeah,
because they all have to be kept happy.
Oh, to be happy, and I looked it up before. Soma means, I think, body, if I remember right, and like Latin or Greek or something like that. But I think probably Latin, because of the S. But yeah, so it's interesting. So you get these dystopian type storytelling where drugs are used to keep people sedated and non-threatening. So you have Soma and Brave New World. You have THX 1138 by our good friend George Lucas of Star Wars fame, right? So his kind of artsy independent movie, sci-fi independent movie, he did before Star Wars. So THX 1138, and it's just keeping people happy, right? It's kind of like the whole thing with the Soviet Union, where it was very expensive to buy bread, but it was damn cheap to buy vodka. All right, it's the opiate of the masses. Right? Well, religion's opiate.
I thought that was religion.
It is, but it's the same concept, right? It's something to keep them dumb, something non-critical thinking, and non-motivated. But then you have street drugs, right? So it's more of a social impact. Things like, we mentioned Neuromancer, but I'm just thinking like dust from Babylon 5, or STEM. So there's a stimulant from Babylon 5 as well. What do you guys think?
Well, I can't handle stimulants stronger than caffeine, so I really couldn't tell you about stimulants.
And then there's, of course, Star Wars glitter stems, right? Which is, I think, a type of spice. Yeah. And, of course, we'll see spice, that's a Star Wars thing. But before Star Wars, there was a spice melange out of Dune. And I think the books really go into the whole drug addiction aspect of the spice melange versus, say, the David Lynch movie from 1984-ish.
Well, and if you think about it, it's like the entire universe of Dune only functions because everyone is high.
Oh God!
You can't travel in space without being on spice. You can't predict the future without being on spice. You can't you can't do anything without being on spice. So it's just like, okay.
It's like caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
So many people can't function in the normal world without caffeine. I've read some accounts on some definitions of addiction that suggest that caffeine is the single most common addiction that we have on this particular planet. It is not an affliction to which I'm susceptible. I have 1 cup of coffee a day if my wife is home, because she likes to have coffee in the morning. And if she's not, I don't. So, but so many people don't talk to me before I've had my first cup of coffee. It's such a common meme that one sees on the internet. I don't know the psychological literature to determine whether or not that actually counts as an addiction. I don't know if it interferes with the functioning of ordinary life, but it's certainly, much like the spice in the Dune series, something that people believe they need to make the world tick.
Great. So not only am I, addict from alcohol and addicted to alcohol, I'm addicted to caffeine. That's 2 for the day. Excellent. Yes.
There's also sugar as well.
I was about to say that.
I mean, sugar is in everything that we eat and drink, and I know if I have one addiction, it's definitely sugar. Because it's in your soda, it's in your cereal, it's in your, anything aside from, does alcohol have sugar in it? I don't know.
Yeah, alcohol is sugar.
It is? Okay, there we go.
In its best possible form.
Yes, agreed.
Amazing. Even like in Dune, you have the captain of the Harkonnen Guard, right? Okay, he's addicted to a natural type of drug. You have Peter de Vries, which is a character which is probably going to be playing a bigger role in film when the new Dune movie comes out at the end of this month, end of this year, hopefully. And it's a 2-parter. And I'm looking at that. There's a lot. Now, let me ask you this. What are your favorite drug addicts in sci-fi? There's one that stands out to me. There's a couple, actually. They're not even sci-fi. It's just say fiction.
Prefect, I think is one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah?
Because he's always drunk.
Okay, drunks. Okay, we have that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, who did you say? Carrie?
Ford Prefect.
Ford Prefect.
Okay. Derek, what's your favorite?
That's an interesting choice.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Thank you, Randall.
Explain why. Let's go down that path.
Well, it's interesting because you asked for drug addict, and of course alcohol is a subcategory of drug. We don't often think of it that way, but it is. And Ford Prefect, we never see it really affecting his behavior negatively, right? We only see it's interesting to me in that it reinforces his overall well-being. Remember when he thinks he goes into the chamber where you actually see your significance compared to the scope of the universe, and he walks in and comes out thinking, yeah, I'm awesome. That seems to be well, actually it's because that's not an actual representation of that chamber. I think he's in some sort of hologram at that point, but it's seen as a great preserver of his life, which gives one interesting insights into Douglas Adams. I think that's a really interesting choice. Also because it's so comedic in its representation of addiction. And I would be inclined to like depictions like that more than more realistic ones, because realistic depictions of addiction are sad.
Yeah.
Ford
literally has to choose between a shopping cart full of booze and his best friend.
That's
And
right.
of course, he chooses Arthur, which is fine. It's just, otherwise the story would be over by now. But yeah, the
Yeah, it
booze
was
or his friend. Yeah.
not an easy choice for him. And like for me, I can't think of a favorite offhand. I don't know why I'm feeling so negative right now. The first one that came to mind was my least favorite depiction of addiction, and it's Dr. Stephen Franklin on Babylon 5.
Right.
When he became addicted to stims. Well, like I did not like those episodes. I did not like him going on walkabout afterward. I just found it, with all respect to J. Michael Straczynski, who I think is amazing. I thought that was hella lame. But I didn't enjoy it reminded me of listening to The Doors, that sort of experience where everything is sort of mournful and awful, and I wish I could chew my own ears off so I didn't have to hear it. That was my experience of those episodes. That it felt too real and gritty. I like the sort of there's a reason hall addiction is the most appealing addiction to me, right? It's upbeat and silly. And it doesn't actually seem like it had too many deleterious effects for Barclay. Whereas you can envision a version of those stories where it was completely debilitating and devastating and ruined everyone's lives.
He did almost destroy the ship a couple of times.
Yeah, and then of course he totally saved the ship on the nth degree when he used the holodeck to create a neural interface that allowed him to traverse the galaxy. Hooray for addiction.
Well, while we're on the subject of least favorite depictions of addiction, there's Willow in season 6 of Buffy when she got addicted to magic. I was just like, I mean, I kind of get what they were trying to go for, but still, she's like,
Yeah,
okay.
Fair enough. Yeah. So
I
Joel,
mean,
I know you had
Evil
one
Willow is awesome, but yeah.
sounds charming. Go ahead.
Nice. I know Joel had one in mind in particular when he was saying, "What's your favorite addiction?" So I'm eager to hear that.
I have to say it's Sherlock Holmes. His cocaine habit, okay? It's traditional.
Is he sci-fi though?
I think he's sci-fi. Who cares? But there's that one. I think he's a famous one, right? Okay, because he's such a brilliant, smart man. And I have friends like that, and I don't think you know them, Randall. It's people who are so smart. People who went to Western and got degrees in philosophy. There's one person in particular I'm thinking of. His real name is George, and he had to dumb his brain thought process down by basically becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol. That's 20 years ago. And he lives in London, Ontario, and he was brilliant, and he had to slow his thought processes down just to be able to interact with other people. So I think Sherlock Holmes is kind of like that as well. He needs to dumb himself down just to perform, just to be part of the world itself, because he can't cope with it by being himself. That's sad. It's interesting, but it's really sad.
I get that. I get your point, Joel, but isn't Sherlock usually on either nicotine or cocaine or caffeine or some combination of all of those? Those are all stimulants. If you want to like dumb yourself down, that's not what you do. You take something like you do something like smoke weed,
which is fair.
to bring yourself down to everyone else's level instead of jacking yourself up through the roof.
Yep.
I'm reading about Sherlock's addictions. He sometimes used morphine, which would slow you down, I think.
That's
but sometimes cocaine. Which I love how specific they are. I'm just reading about Holmes using drugs, and they say the latter of which he injects in a 7% solution. So he's shooting up cocaine.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm legally obligated to point out that I wrote a science fiction Sherlock Holmes story involving drug use that was actually published. It's in Baker Street Irregulars Volume 2, The Game is Afoot. It's about a year or two old at this point.
Nice.
I have read this.
Yeah. It involves a drug called S's, which allows you to overclock your brain in order to think faster and stronger.
Because he really needs to do that.
Yeah. But there's also other drugs in classical literature or like 19th century literature. You have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Louis Stevenson. All right, They had this serum that made the difference between the good portion of the guy's personality and the bad, more animalistic part of his personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, that article you sent us that pointed out that early uses of drugs in genre fiction, starting from the late 1800s into the early 1900s, was basically a cautionary tale about how drugs are evil, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and The Invisible Man and things like that, about how, because this was just around the time when pharmaceutical drugs began to become a thing and started getting prescribed to people, and this was a reaction to the moral and ethical dangers of taking these drugs to alter your behavior.
Yeah, but you have to see too. You got like the gin craze of London in the 19th century, right? So I know Europe had a long history of abusing alcohol, and more so in the early 1800s before we hit the Victorian period. But yeah, I think it's quite addictive myself.
Well, yeah, I mean, alcohol was always there, and there were, traditional drugs, but this was about, scientific drugs, science creating a new drug to fix humanity, and, how that could be dangerous and immoral. How it could create something even worse in its stead.
Take the red pill instead of the blue pill. I got you.
Thinking about favorite alcoholics rather than favorite, narcotic addicts, I'm torn about Iron Man and Jessica Jones. I quite like both characters. I found it really interesting that nowhere in the Marvel movies did we ever explore that. Like, we would often see Tony with a scotch in his hand, but he was never debilitated by it. Whereas in the comic books, there was a long period where he could barely function because he was such an alcoholic. And Jessica Jones, it seems she has some level of trying to control herself through alcohol. And trying to sort of keep the demons out by alcohol. I really like those depictions. Again, they're more fantastical than real. They don't tread on the ground of sadness in the way that Babylon 5 did, but I found those sort of made them richer, more real characters, more interesting characters than just, I'm super strong or I have a cool suit.
They haven't referenced it in the movies yet, but Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, is also an alcoholic as well in the comics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
As
yeah,
Tony.
she and Tony are, what do you call it? AA partners or whatever you call that?
Yeah, AA.
I thought you were going to say drinking buddies. I have to admit, one thing made me sad on Joel's show notes. For listeners who don't know this, Joel puts together a lovely set of show notes for us, just in case we're completely directionless, as we are sometimes. And I was reading along, list of alcoholics, and the third one down is Homer Simpson, and that just made me sad. I never really thought of him that way. It's like there's the amiable drunk, and then there's the alcoholic, right? And I always sort of thought of Homer as the former, but picturing him through a lens of alcoholism just makes the whole world of The Simpsons sad.
Well, it is.
My favorite Homer Simpson quote is, "To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems."
Yeah, that's my version of Homer.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't really argue with it. He's always drinking beer.
That is true.
I like to think.
And full disclosure, I mean, we did mention my last name at the beginning of the show, but I spent most of middle school not completely understanding who the fuck Homer was. It was like people would always ask me how Homer and Bart were like, who are you talking about?
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
One of my favorite superhero movies of all time is Hancock. And
Yes.
I just love that movie. I have watched it about a bazillion times. And the first 2/3 of that movie where Will Smith is drinking all the time. And that's an interesting, again, sort of making slightly light of the dimming effects of alcohol and alcohol addiction, but still making it somewhat real, right? Like, he can't live to his full potential as a superhero because of what he's doing to himself with alcohol. I think that's a really neat depiction. And he's such a drunk that even though he's known to be this superhero, and he has no secret identity, he's just this massive superhero everyone knows. Even little kids are telling him he's a loser when they find him passed out drunk on a bench.
Speaking of the show notes, Joel wrote that down as Handcock, and I was confused. Do not Google it. You're going to come across something else.
I just noticed some typos. I'm sorry. Put the notes together fast.
Also referencing the show notes here, I need to give Joel props for including Conquer, because Conquer's Bad Fur Day is like Deadpool levels of wrong.
I don't know.
But on the multiplayer, in the multiplayer mode, you do get to play Greg, the Grim Reaper, who is awesome. And if you are my best friend with the Grim Reaper and a katana, everyone watch out.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's Conquer the Scroll if you're into gaming. There's also Max Payne, another gaming guy. There's that. I'm not particularly into gaming, but I know I've heard of these people before, so there's that. Mm-hmm. I'm looking. There's also another typo. There's also Bender, which I put it as The Simpsons. He's not The Simpsons, obviously. He's Futurama.
Yeah.
Me bad. But Bender, who doesn't like an alcoholic robot? You know,
it requires alcohol to operate his body, though. So is it really addiction? That's like oxygen for him.
Yeah.
So it's like the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's his version of petrol. You know, energy. Some people some robots need to recharge. Some of them need alcohol.
So unless I'm mistaken about the nature of this, or unless I missed it in the show notes, there was a surprising omission from the show notes, given the nature of the author and his favorite fandom. And I remind you of it by one line. You want to buy some death sticks?
Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, it is up here in under further up in the show notes.
Oh, is it? I missed that.
Yeah, and the show notes, they're just a guide. It's not like it's a script. It's just
they're
brainstorming.
More like guidelines. They're not rules.
No.
And also, when Joel mentioned the topic, that was the first thing I said in the chat.
Oh, nice. I didn't see that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, this is how we come up with topics.
I want to go home and rethink my life.
This is how we
Aren't you home already, Randall?
Well, home is a state of mind.
Oh, God. This is how we come up with topic ideas. I sit at the bar, I drink, my mind wanders, and then I suggest things like, oh, let's do addictions. Okay. Dear Lord.
Wait, you're actually sitting in bars right up there?
Yeah, we are. Our bars have been open for a couple of weeks now, inside. Our patios have been open for 2 months.
Damn it.
In Canada.
I have not been brave enough to go into a bar. I mean, I don't go to bars very frequently anyway, but last night, because of rain, I was forced inside from a patio for the first time since the pandemic started. I was had a reservation to go to our club and eat on the patio, and the rain came in, and we had to go indoors, and that was my first indoor excursion. We all had to put masks on to go inside. We all had them with us, and take them off only when the food arrived, and then you could chat and eat your food and whatnot. But yeah, we've been open, but I am not brave enough to take advantage of all of the openness that we have in our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really comfortable in bars itself. I've been in some bars. I prefer the patios. So. Yes. Other alcoholics. Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons. You think he'd be as funny? He'd be as funny if he wasn't an alcoholic? Like, he doesn't clown around that much. I don't know. There's that. And, of course, if we are going to extend the definition of science fiction to include most other fictions, who can't forgets Captain Jack Sparrow, Pirates of the Caribbean?
Ah, yes.
Yes. Why is the rum always gone?
Because it is always gone.
Oh, God. Returning to Star Trek. Okay, Gel Damar from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, that was another sad depiction of alcoholism. He always drank. Was it Kanar? That's the the Cardassian drink. And so as one does, I found myself sitting at a table having dinner with Casey Biggs at the next table, who is the actor who plays Gul Damar. That was on a Star Trek cruise, and I like to let the stars do their own thing when you bump into them. And I went up to a buffet. It was a buffet restaurant, and I was availing myself of some of the food, and I heard this voice before I saw him, and I'm like, that's Gul Damar. And I looked over, and there's Casey Biggs standing there. And he approached me in conversation first, and then he sat down at the table behind us, and he said something else chatting to us, and I asked if I could order his table a bottle of Kanar. And he said, oh, my God, I don't touch the stuff, but if you want to send some scotch over, I wouldn't argue.
That's great.
That's awesome.
I ended up eating at tables next to Casey Biggs at 3 different restaurants 3 nights in a row. And there was no planning in any of this. It just, I booked 3 different restaurants on the ship, and I guess we had similar preferences and a similar eating schedule.
Was
Me
he
and
giving you the
Goldemar.
nervous side eye by the end of it?
Yeah, no, I was giving it to him. I think Casey Biggs is obsessed with me. That's my analysis. He's probably a big fan of Before Life, and just wanted to be near me.
Drink. Okay.
Fair enough.
Dear God.
You don't even have to tell me to drink anymore. I just have it.
It's interesting that they wrote alcoholism into the Goldemar character. I don't know if this is a chicken and egg problem, but Casey Biggs teaches bartending courses on the Star Trek cruise. Like he'll have a Scotch tasting or teach you how to make various cocktails. It's probably because his character was like that. I doubt that Casey Biggs was a giant drinker, and so they wrote it into his character. That would be sad.
Oh,
But,
That would be sad, yes.
Yeah, it was an interesting aspect of that character that not only did he become addicted to Kanar, he was drinking it all day, he got called out on it by Wei Yun so frequently. And it seemed to really impair their relationship and also his ability to deal with Cardassia. And it was interesting that he was coping with the fact that he thought his side was in the wrong. And the only way he could cope with that is to remain slightly impaired the whole time.
Well, I mean, if there is one acceptable way to deal with Wei Yu that doesn't involve shooting him and getting a replacement Wei Yu, that's to probably drink.
Oh, I love Jeffrey Combs so much.
I love Jeffrey Combs too, but I mean, how Wei Yu would have driven me to drink,
Yeah,
or homicide, and obviously homicide wouldn't have worked because he's a clone.
Fair enough.
My memory of the writer interviews was that it was something that just kind of like came out of the moment, because they just had a couple scenes where he was at Quark's bar drinking and resentful, and then they just kind of liked the way it looked so much they decided to do a whole arc of it to give him something to do.
Oh, that's right. I remember reading that. And Casey Biggs hated the idea.
He hated having to drink that colored crap.
Yeah, and the writers just thought it was cool, and so they went with it. Well, it was interesting having so much of the show set in a bar. Like you have to address the fact that there's going to be people who come in and drink all the time. Maybe Morn was an alcoholic. We have no idea.
Yeah, but it's like MASH with Hawkeye, right? The old 1970s TV show MASH about the Korean War. You have all these U.S. Doctors, military doctors, and you have Hawkeye and the others. They're just slosh most of the time, and they're doing surgery, right? Explain that.
Well, I mean, McCoy drank a lot too, so.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
So you guys know more about superhero comics than I do, in my estimation, and I seem to recall some vague mumblings that they got rid of the history of the super soldier serum in Captain America for a time because they didn't like the idea of performance enhancing substances infusing him and making him the best warrior ever. I don't
remember that.
That doesn't sound familiar at all.
No. Yes, I had heard that they removed it from him, and then it turned out that he'd had it so long that he genetically produced the super soldier serum internally. So it wasn't that like he was made special by something that came out of a vial, as Tony once called him on in the Avengers movies.
No, it doesn't sound familiar.
I don't remember that at all. I do remember in the 90s the Spider-Man animated series, they gave Felicia Hardy a version of the super soldier serum, and that gave her powers.
It's kind of like making like a Clockwork Orange, right? A Milk Plus, or AKA a Morocco Plus, just to get you really psych. Not it's the same as making you into Captain America, obviously, but yeah. And before I forget, there's Substance D from Philip K. Dick's story, A Scanner Darkly from 1977. That's important. And I'd be remiss if I didn't actually mention this, but Tech Wars, the whole tech thing. So William Shatner's TV show from like 20 years ago.
Oh yeah,
and the books. Yeah, I haven't read or watched either. So.
Yeah, but listen, coming back to our favorite drug addicts in fiction, I have to say this is kind of outside of the box, but Major Tom from the David Bowie's different songs. So when you hear like Space Oddity and all that, so Bowie is actually singing about this astronaut, Major Tom, who's in space who's high as a kite. He's tripping out. So
it's all the pure oxygen. He's
yeah.
Is that literally what the song is about?
Some of them, yeah, because he's mentioned like 4 or 5 different songs, and it's him basically tripping out while in space. And
it's not a metaphor; it's literal.
It's both actually. So yeah, there you go, man.
Cool.
Wow.
Well, is Puff the Magic Dragon about weed?
Of course.
I will give you that, Randall. Yes.
Little Jackie Paper is probably one of my favorite drug addicts of all time because he loved that Rascal Puff.
What else? DC Comics. Carrie, you're our leading expert on DC Comics.
Yes.
We have Bane. Who else do we have? We have Harvey Bullock, who's an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Bane needs Venom to survive or to become
Well, he needs Venom to bulk up.
Yeah, right. So it's
if he's not on the Venom, then he's a scrawny little shit.
Oh, okay. So it's like
the Gail Simmons Secret Six series from the 2000s had Bane as a character, and he was going through withdrawal for his addiction to Venom and trying not to use it anymore.
Oh, that's
good
nice.
comic.
It sounds like he's taking the right approach and he's dealing with this issue, so which is always sexy.
But now in the new continuity, I think he's just evil again. I think they took away all of his moral ambiguity. Because he was kind of an anti-hero prior to the continuity reset. I think he's just a villain again now. I haven't read those.
So speaking of clearing up moral ambiguity, I have just Googled Puff the Magic Dragon, and all of the writers of the song claim that it's absolutely not about marijuana anyway. It's about a loss of innocence. It's based on a poem written by a 19-year-old at Cornell. And they all deny consistently that it's about marijuana. And Snopes is sufficiently giving sufficient credence to that it lists it as false that Puff the Magic Dragon is about marijuana. I still believe that Puff the Magic Dragon is about marijuana, and this is a hill that I'm not willing to die on, but I'm willing to fight on.
You're willing to light skirmish.
That's right. I'm willing to have a slap fight or at least exchange stern words on this hill.
I need another Caesar. Okay.
Oh wow.
The drunk.
And okay, so it's sci-fi adjacent, but once this whole pandemic business is behind us and we can go to conventions again, I really need to find a way to get to a Star Trek con where Barfleet is in attendance, because I listen to the mission log guys talk to the Vice Admiral all the time, and they just sound like a fun bunch of guys.
Oh wow, yeah, definitely. I know.
But they're all stationed in like the Midwest, so I would have to go to Ohio or something, or STLV.
Yeah, that'd be good. Probably get a decent drink there. Oh wait, sorry, that's my issue.
So speaking of Star Trek conventions, I don't think I mentioned on our last discussion, maybe I did, that our cruise has officially been pushed to 2022. I will not be sailing the Star Trek seas again, if at all. Like, who knows if this thing will happen, but they've moved it to 2022. I think I did mention that last time. But that gives you guys all plenty of time to book suites on the next Star Trek cruise.
And to get a promotion at work to be able to afford it.
yeah, like several promotions at work, and $1 million, and I also have Star Wars Celebration in 2 years.
If we switch to an all ramen diet now, I think we'll be able to pull it off.
but you'll die of sodium poisoning just before the cruise.
Yeah.
True.
I've been playing the lottery, so that's my way to deal with it. Okay.
Well, and also because everything's been pushed back, the likelihood that I may have to pay for another belt promotion in a year where I have conventions to go to, it's it's fun.
Yeah, I wish I could go, and I might. We'll see what happens. Other famous drug addicts and alcoholics in sci-fi before we wrap up, because we're approaching an hour right now. I just have to say Tyrion Lannister from Games of Thrones. He drinks and he knows things.
Yes.
which I can really
Tyrion?
relate to. Yeah.
You mean Tyrion? You
Yeah,
said
Tyrion.
Tywin.
Yeah, okay.
You said Tywin. Tywin
Tyrion.
was a
Oh, okay, sorry.
bastard.
Yeah, sorry, Tyrion. The not very tall fellow, if you know, if you catch my drift. Okay.
Yes, he does drink and know things, and he was awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of like my professional life right there. Who else is there? Sarah Connor from the Terminators. Yes, this is what happens when people try to kill you, big robots from the future. You turn into a raging alcoholic with guns. And
I don't remember that. Was that which movie was that? Was that in
T2.
Yeah.
Oh, T2?
Yeah.
So I know I'm a Star Trek specialist here, who my only real big fandom is Star Trek. But I, to this day, have no idea. What the hell is synthahol? Do you get drunk off it or don't you?
No, you do not. It is fake alcohol. It's like Splenda or Equal, but alcohol.
But what the heck is it for then? They say it has this. I'm reading about it now. It says it has the same taste and smell as real alcohol. Neither of which are particularly great.
It's just if you like the bubbly as it goes down. That's all.
Yeah, it's like I guess it's like it's if you want to drink socially, but not have to deal with the after effects.
It doesn't hit the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
I now recall, because I'm reading about it, and it's allowing me to recall, despite the Tranya that I've been drinking, that it has minimal intoxicating effects. So they're there enough to notice them, but they don't ultimately impair you.
It's like non-alcoholic beer.
Except for it actually has some alcohol. Like Data said in Relics, speaking to Scotty, that the intoxicating effects can easily be dismissed.
Yeah.
So
like
it has them.
So like
non-alcoholic beer actually does have a teeny tiny bit of alcohol as well.
Yeah.
Oh, like American beer.
Yeah. Well, and then because I brought Mission Log already, but they just started season 5 of DS9, and the first episode is they're all the 4 of the flag officers are going to Kronos to infiltrate a party, and they have to take drugs so that the blood wine doesn't affect them.
Yeah.
I have to admit, of all the things that have happened to me in the last week, the thing I'm most proud of is how much I made Joel laugh with that reference to American Beer. For those of you joining us only on audio, he stopped laughing about 2/3 of the way through Carrie's discussion there, and I've never been more proud.
That was just the timing was impeccable, Randall. Your timing was good, sir. I must admit that. Impeccable. Okay. Princess Bride, Nego Matanya, you killed my father, prepared to die. Who doesn't like a drunken Spaniard who fences?
Well, he's only drunk after he realizes his mission is a complete failure.
Really, I'm not sure. I think he probably drinks a lot. I don't know. And remember, I'm actually somewhat an expert on fencing. I fenced varsity for 4 years with Brock University. So, yeah. So and drinking. I've been drinking since I was like 15. Yeah, don't do the math there. Yes, there you go.
but don't drink and play with swords. That's how I walk into Bokens.
Yeah, that's a good point to make.
Yes.
My favorite drunken scene in all of sci-fi could be the fist fight between Jean-Luc Picard and his brother.
Could you really consider them being drunk? I mean, they were out in the fields with the grapes, but I don't know that they were actually drinking at the time.
Well, by the time we came home, they were sitting there completely sozzled, singing "En roulant ma boule roulant."
That is true.
Or no, that's not. They were singing a French ditty, and when Picard's sister-in-law came home, we discovered them completely hammered on the family wine.
Yes.
Yes, I nearly bought some of Picard's wines. You can do it on the CBS store, but apparently I can't order anything from the United States right now because the whole border locked down. I've waited. Shop Disney doesn't let you send things to Canada right now. I ordered some stuff from the Planetary Society through their T-shirt shop, and it's been stuck in New Jersey International U.S. Post Center for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, Afterlife. is unfortunately only not available in the U.S., so I have to wait until the border opens before I can order a copy. Sorry,
Oh.
Randall.
Oh, well, you can always get it on Kobo or audiobook. I'm just saying.
Nice
I
save.
just remembered that the drunken song that Picard was singing was "Oh, près de ma blonde." Il faible, faible, faible. Oh, près de ma blonde. That's what he and his brother were singing when they were completely hammered. They had fled my tiny mind.
Great. That's amazing.
I know that our listeners were particularly worried about resolving that little mystery.
Ah,
Now we
murder.
can sleep at night.
No, I still can't sleep at night, but at least I know the answer to that question.
All right. Let's some general wrap-up questions, guys, to get your thoughts before we close our doors for this episode. So, when a character has an addiction, do you think it adds to the character in storytelling, or does it distract from the character?
I think it depends on how he's written, he or she,
Yeah.
or it. Yeah.
Because I know, like, Randall mentions that he doesn't like the more down and realistic interpretation of drug addiction in storytelling, and I can see why. Because it's depressing, right? Because a person loses their free will. It takes away, it destroys free will when you're dealing with harder drugs.
Well, it's like the depiction of any disability, right? Like if you have a disability in name only, like Geordie's blindness, where it actually gives him superpowers because of his visor, then that's not a sad depiction of disability. If you have another depiction of disability where it's just showing you how someone is excluded from some activities of real life, or someone is mistreated because of their disability, that's depressing. And they're both, there are visions of both in reality being reflected in science fiction. And addiction to me is just like that. When you have Dr. Stephen Franklin on the one hand, it's depressing. When you have Barclay on the other, it's hilarious.
But I think you kind of have to have both to just illustrate, the for lack of a better term, best and worst of what this does to people, or what a disability of any kind does to people.
I think you can do both as well, but it depends. Like, non-genre specific, but the HBO TV show The Wire that was on maybe 15 years ago for, I think, 5 seasons, there was a character by the name of Bubbles. He was a street homeless drug addict. And his addiction, there was some comedic moments over it. Also some pathetic and really sad moments. But you can do both. And it's how you write that into the storytelling. And I think it needs to serve the story it's telling. And then, like Star Trek, having a really down, like heartful, like a realistic view or version of drug addiction, it's not too much fun. I think it probably serves as a distraction and takes away from the storytelling. But it upsets me when it feels like punching down. Like when you're for the purpose of your story, you're taking advantage of someone who is disadvantaged.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts before we close the doors?
Drugs are bad. Don't do drugs.
Drugs are bad. Okay.
Oh, God.
Except I'm gonna go get high later. Oh.
As long as it's legal, and I really don't care. Okay. All right. Any last thoughts, Randall? You're our esteemed guest.
Well, I'm very appreciative once again of you guys having me on the show. I do look forward to the times that we get to spend together, and the pandemic has meant that I don't get to go to the theater on Sundays, so I'm here a little bit more frequently. So thank you very much for giving me this little venue. I love this little show that you've created, the three of you together, and under Joel's leadership, and I appreciate every opportunity I have to be here and to have an excuse to drink a glass of Tranya at 3 p.m. on a Sunday. So thank you very much, and I look forward to our next outing.
Thank you. These are kind words. I really take that to heart. So, because this podcast is all about community and reaching out to people who share similar interests and basically democratizing podcasting. Because for too many years, in my opinion, lots of people see podcasting as a way of gatekeeping into fan communities, and really, the technology is not that hard. Anyone can do it. So, and there we are. Okay.
Randall's praise is our drug.
Yeah, God. Yeah. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Vanity. Yeah, vanity.
Derek's
Yeah.
Now that I've got you addicted, I'm going to start charging for it.
Our first taste was free.
Oh God.
I've got some pocket lid I can send over to you, Randall, but I can't do that until the borders are open.
Fair enough. There's no limit.
We're gonna have to buy like 15 copies of his book now.
Yeah, again, once the borders are open and things can be shipped from Canada.
Yeah. Hey, because I have you on the line right now, Randall, on the Skype call. Have you seen our YouTube stuff?
I have.
Right. Okay. You know, I actually copy and paste your image and the images of your books in the YouTube feed, right? So people can see the cover.
Lovely of you.
Thank
you very much for doing that.
All right. Let's close this door. So yes, the show is released as a podcast and on YouTube. Subscribe today. Check out our Discord server. It's a great source of news and discussion. You can find an invite to Discord on our social media. And our social media, if you're wondering, well, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram. I do the Twitter and Instagram, and Derek does the Facebook. Derek, you're doing a wonderful job with the Facebook, man.
Gracias.
Great. If you want to email us, please email management@scifipubcast.space. Carrie, what's your Twitter address, your personal Twitter account?
My Twitter handle is Carrie Blackfire42. That's Keri Blackfire42.
And what other podcasts do you host?
I am on DC Talk, which is a DC comics and media related podcast and news and discussion show. And I'm also on the Cape Chronicles, which is a look chronologically at every superhero movie ever. Yeah, and I think not this week, but next week we're doing like a special re-ranking show so that we can delay our watching of the best Iron Man sequel ever.
Oh, nice. That's funny. And they both can be found on the Random Chatter Network, all right?
That is correct.
Cool. Derek, what's your Twitter address?
I am at Derek J. Beebe, and we did not coordinate our outfits. We all just happen to be wearing black shirts today.
Yeah.
I'm always wearing a black shirt, so I don't know what you guys are. Yeah. I don't know what you guys are doing, but
you will not believe this, but I am wearing a white T-shirt and a white robe, so I'm like Gandalf over here.
Whereas I'm wearing
Randall, you do not fit. You must be Gandalf.
It's true.
Whereas I'm wearing a Somewhere in Time Iron Maiden T-shirt. There you go. Okay, Randall.
And no pants.
And no pants. Randall, what's your Twitter address?
It's at Randal_Graham.
Right, and you have one novel that's out and one novel that's coming out very soon. Before Life is the first one, and Afterlife Crisis. Is that right?
That is absolutely true. It comes out on September 8th in every format you could hope for, and probably then some. It comes out in regular form, audiobook, and electronic form on September 8th.
Yes, we like to support the people who supports us, so please consider going out and buying Randall's book. And then you can send him emails saying how much you like or dislike it. But yeah, it's I think, Randall, you do like your puns, so I can relate to that.
Oh, sometimes I've been known to like a pun or two.
And wordplay, and yeah, so there's that. Yeah, so buy Randall's book, please.
And my books too.
Oh, right.
Yeah, also Derek's books.
All right, and I'm not selling anything. Not yet. Maybe someday. But when I do, please buy whatever I'm selling. Okay. My address. So I'm at Joel_Welch. WELCH. It's closing time. Please take care and make it home safe, especially in these interesting times, so to speak. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Music provided courtesy of Logan Rathbone. Podcast logo by Jea Rhea. Copyrighted Joe Welch. Listen responsibly, and we can't wait for your next visit to our fine establishment. Cheers.